Mandalorian Dreams equals RK equals Part 5 Sundari Royal Palace. Sundari, Mandalore. Vale. What the criff is wrong with you? I beamed at Kenobi's uncharacteristic cursing. His Jedi indoctrination was falling apart much sooner than anticipated. First, congratulations for losing your virginity. I grinned. What? I wasn't a virgin, damn it. Oh, so you've been a bad boy before we met. My grin widened. Good for you. Second, couldn't you, besides seducing the Duchess and getting laid in the process, talk a bit of sense in her? That's now what happened. I didn't seduce her. Obi-Wan didn't sound very convincing. So she seduced you? That's it. You aren't negotiating again. Ever. At least was she any good? The stories I've heard about Mandalorian women. I leaned back just in time to avoid being slugged. Whoa. Who knew that getting laid would have such an effect on Kenobi? That should be mandatory for all Jedi. It obviously made them act more like people than robots. Down boy. Congratulations. When are you becoming full-fledged Mandalorian? What? That stopped Obi-Wan in his tracks. There's a reason I haven't slept with Mandalorian women back in my time. There are certain expectations that come with the territory. Like becoming a Mandalorian. If you don't, once Satine's indiscretion comes to light, what little credibility she has left will immediately evaporate. That's criff. Kenobi blanched. He was getting pale too. Didn't think about that, did you? What we did is no one's business. Obi-Wan snapped. Please. I know that you aren't that naive. You won't be going out heralding it, Kenobi snapped. Why? It can only enhance your considerable reputation. Vale. Obi-Wan hissed. Then, there's Bo, who isn't too fond of her sister, the Prime Minister, who might decide to cut off his losers and throw the delectable Duchess under the Airbus, that advisor, the palace guards who are certainly to know what you two were up to. I trailed off. I couldn't keep the cheer out of my voice. This is a disaster. Obi-Wan moaned. What? Are you afraid that the council will kick you out for being human? For blowing up the negotiations? For letting my feeling rule me? Stop playing the victim. You just got laid, and considering how you and the Duchess felt when I entered this room, you both liked it. Right? Besides, this is an opportunity. For a moment, Obi-Wan became beef-red, then he shook his head and narrowed his eyes at me. What are you scheming now? Well, we have various problems on Mandalore. I beamed at the Jedi Master. You just gave me a way to solve most of them, though certain sacrifices are to be made. You may even enjoy some of them, I chuckled. Yep. This might work. At the very least, it was going to buy me some time. I know that look. Obi-Wan's voice grew suspicious. First, you're going to quit the Jedi Order, I chuckled at his dumbstruck expression. What? Are you out of your criffing mind? Kenobi exclaimed. Oh, shut up and listen, I snapped. You made your bed and now you're going to lay in it. You and Satine just gave me a potential way to save Mandalore. Is your pride worth the millions who will die if we criff up our mission here? Obi-Wan glared at me but remained silent. Good. Second, you're going to officially hook up with the Duchess. I pointed at her behind my back. After that you're adopting the Mandalorian culture with a gusto and becoming the best criffing Mandalorian warrior that this rock has seen in the last few thousand years. That's your plan? It's insane. Obi-Wan spat. Then we will ensure that you become Mandalore so the warriors will flock behind you instead of joining the Death Watch and the Separatists. That way we'll short-circuit the worst of the impending civil war, use our forces to aid the Mandalorians in eliminating the Cis fleet presence here and in the nearby sectors. Oh, yeah, Mandalore becomes an ally of the Republic too, so I don't have to go old-fashioned Sith on the place. It's a win-win situation. Besides, if you're lucky you got to marry your Duchess and have a hot steaming sex with her on regular basis. A win-win situation if I ever saw one. I beamed. Is she a screamer by the way? I asked idly. I was too busy congratulating myself about my latest brainstorm, that I didn't react fast enough when Obi-Wan's fist rocketed my way again. Ouch. If you try this again, I'll slug you back, I snapped at the fuming Jedi. This plan's our best chance, so you're getting one for the team and might even like it, so man up. Vale, you're an utter and unrepentant bastard. Obi-Wan hissed. There was loathing. And was that admiration in his voice? Thanks for the compliment. The man was already practically a grey Jedi, so I was successful on that front at least. Hey equals. Long time no see, sis. Have you managed to utterly destroy our clan's reputation yet? Bo-Katan sneered. Our reputation as murderers, you mean? I hear you keep it up nicely, Satine spat back. You're a disgrace for Mandalore. Bo snipped back. Only for the old bastards who refuse to see that their ways are obsolete. Naive much? What has your way brought us? We are on the eve of destruction because of you and the new Mandalorians. Bo-Katan snapped. Nonsense. It's all because of your kind, fools who cling to our past as the scourge of the galaxy that we're in this position. If it wasn't for the Death Watch, this war would have never come to our doorsteps. You're a fool, Satine. The vaulted clone army of the Republic? The template was a Mandalorian. It's trained by Mandalorians. Bo-Katan hissed. We've been neck-deep in this war even before it began. Satine recoiled back as if her sister punched her in the gut. That man over there? The Mandalorian warrior pointed at Vale. He's a Sith, Satine. He will burn our world and love every moment of it unless we support the Republic. We don't have the forces to give him pause. The Separatists? They would do the same. Why, you may ask? Because we are too weak to have a voice. It's join or die, all because of you. Mandalore is about to die, because of your blindness. The Duchess stared at her sister open-mouthed. Was it worth it? Bo-Katan sneered. What did your policies give us? What are you going to do now? We have to remain neutral. It's our only option. Satine shook her head in denial. Yours you mean? Oh, I know it. If you chose a side, the new Mandalorians will throw you away. If you don't, one will be chosen for us. Don't you get it, sister? We don't want to be neutral even if that was an option. This war, it makes our blood sing. It's in our blood. It's who we are. Open your eyes, Satine. Bo-Katan implored. They're opened. I can't bring war and suffering to our people. Never again. Did you forget the Civil War? What it cost us all? I do. Bo-Katan's voice was quiet. I lost as much as you did, sister. However, that didn't break me. The warrior woman shouted. I can still see the galaxy as it is instead as what I wish it to be. No matter what you or the new Mandalorian wanted, we Mandalorians aren't pacifists. We aren't peaceful people. We are warriors, Satine. War is in our blood. We had more than a decade of peace under my rule. Why did you all want to throw it away to join the war? Satine snapped. Isn't it obvious, sister? We merely existed under your care. This war, it makes our hearts race. It calls to us, to what we are. You are supposed to be our leader, Satine. Your people are screaming that they want to fight. There are only two questions, on whose side would we fight? And who will lead us? You have an unique opportunity, Satine. You can restore our clan's honor. You can lead our people into a new age, or go down as a traitor to everything that we as Mandalorians stand for. Hey equals. Part 6. Sundari Royal Palace. Sundari. Mandalore. This is madness. Obi-Wan snapped. Satine didn't look too much against my plan. Well, she seemed receptive of the part where she hooked up with Kenobi, preferably in a way he won't be able to escape her clutches. That's a first. I would have to agree with the Jedi. Bo-Katan frowned. That put a damper on my good cheer. Why? It's perfect. Just look at him. I pointed at Obi-Wan. A genuine warrior who has won a lot of victories and glory. A criffing Jedi. No one would believe that he would put the Mandalorians' well-being before the Republic and his order, Bo snapped. I won't, and I'm a new Mandalorian through and through. The Prime Minister supported my companion. We've been at odds with the Jedi and the Republic for more than 5,000 years. Nearly 5 in fact. Griff. That little fact did escape me. Sometimes I did forgot when I was, especially since I arrived at this place. Mandalore was inducing a lot of nostalgia even if it was quite the different place from what I remembered. The place simply felt similar, familiar. It's irrelevant anyway. No matter what I may wish, Obi-Wan grit his teeth, I can't leave the Jedi Order. Not now. With Anakin's trial coming soon, if I did anything to show that I would follow my heart in spite of the Jedi teachings, it would tear apart the Order. That's something that you know, am I right? Kenobi glared at me. That would be a possible outcome. I nodded diplomatically. There are less than 10,000 Jedi. There are billions of people on this world alone. I smiled. That's low blow. Obi-Wan snapped. You know, I was almost convinced that your naysayers in the Order were mistaken, yet here we are. He glared at me. Hey. Being here and now wasn't my idea. I didn't create this mess either. It's all your girlfriend's fault, I snapped back. I'm merely trying to find an acceptable alternative. Really? It's just a coincidence that your plan puts me in an impossible position? If the Order sunders, there won't be any real opposition if you go on the deep end. Perhaps. I didn't force you to sleep with the Duchess. I didn't send you to seduce her, or did she seduce you? I shrugged. I'm merely taking an advantage of an opportunity. An opportunity to deal the Order a blow it may not recover from? Obi-Wan snapped. I know that we, the Jedi, have our problems. That's no reason to destroy the Order. I won't let myself be used in such a way. What choice is there? Satine muttered. He's right. She pointed at me. If we do nothing, Mandalore burns, either at his hands or because of Death Watch. Without the Jedi Order, the whole galaxy may well follow. Even if I trusted him without reservation. Another finger pointed at my chest. He's not the only Sith. Hey. I'm the only real one, I snapped back. Sidious, Dooku and their pose were nothing but pretentious dark Jedi, even if their leader was really powerful. Besides, when did she start making sense? It was my turn to point fingers and mine targeted Satine. Delkatar, you've been away for a long time. Bo-Katan sighed. The Mandalore you know, is just a legend now. The warriors you're comparing us to, might have followed a Jedi. The stories are clear, they would have loved to follow Revan after he crushed them at Malika V today. There has been too much bad blood. Too many conflicts with bitter resolution. We as a people aren't ready to follow a Jedi. Perhaps even Revan. Besides, he was a Sith at the end. She smiled bitterly. Your Jedi friend. If we put him forward for Mandalore, that would guarantee a civil war. Just enough warriors would support him to ensure it, but even more will flock to the Death Watch. What then? You know your people better than me. Is there someone outside those idiots who can be a viable candidate? If there was, they would have stepped up to prevent the impending civil war. We have seen the writing on the wall, Delkatar. We don't want to fight against each other. However, there simply isn't a figure who can unite us. Not a Mandalorian at least. Bo muttered. She was looking at me funny. Then she smiled in a pleased way. All my warning bells started screaming. A Jedi would be unacceptable. However, you gave me an idea. Her smile grew. Her eyes twinkled with mischief. There's another general who covered himself with honor and glory in the war. A warrior who many will follow. A Sith? Bo was grinning at me. This is madness. If the Senate even thinks about it, they would move to have me dismissed from the army. A lot of the non-clone officers will support them too. It would be seen as a Sith taking steps to rebuild the Empire. Perhaps. Bo-Katan smiled wickedly. You'll have to make certain sacrifices, that's true. Will that stop you from doing the right thing? The honorable thing? Mandalore needs you. You said that Mandalore the Dauntless was a dear friend of yours. Will you let his people fall when you can stop it? The Council will lose it too. They will think that your people will be his personal army. Obi-Wan groaned. If he becomes a Mandalore worthy of the title, we will be. Bo poured more fuel on the fire and relished every moment of it. You're telling me the nicest things, I sighed. The worst thing was that I was tempted, oh so tempted. It would throw most of my plans of disarray, yet the promise of power, real power not beholden to the politician on Coruscant or more importantly to Sidious was incredible. Bo-Katan walked next to me. I beseech you, help me save my people. She paused. Our people. I fought you. I fought beside you. I know that you have more in common with a Mandalorian warrior than anyone else living in today's galaxy. Please. The very thought of an army that would be mine was intoxicating. I looked Bo-Katan in the eyes. I didn't think that there was anyone in this day and age who could read me so well. What about you? What do you want? I asked. She smiled wickedly. To fight beside you. Perhaps more, if you're up to the task. You still owe me a sparring match. Bo leaned closer. Stop flirting already, Satine snapped. A Sith Lord for Mandalore. Are you insane, sister? Bo-Katan turned to face the Duchess. Who else? Your boyfriend will be unacceptable. It would take years for him to disperse the taint of being a Jedi, a peacekeeper, all thanks to your policies, I might add. We're about to enter war as divided people. Without strong leadership, we're doomed. It will be a repeat of the Civil War, but 100 times worse. She looked back at me. I know what your original plan was. It wasn't too hard to figure out, pushing me forward as Mandalore. If we had a few more months, perhaps a year, it might have worked. Now? I'm no one, just another warrior who supported Death Watch. Even worse, Bo nodded at Satine. She's my sister. So that's not in the Pazak hand we've been dealt. Do you know what the worst thing was? Any credible refusal I could give would be a self-serving one. After all, the reasons I had to refuse were simple. Unless I played my card perfectly and had a lot of luck, becoming Mandalore would be tying my hands and reducing the power I now wielded. Doing so would also bring much more scrutiny than I had to face right now. Of course, I couldn't go out and say any of that. After all, my plans for the future wouldn't be exactly welcomed by the present company, Bo excluded. After all, I had already decided that the Republic as it existed today was an obstacle to preparing the galaxy for the Vong. Mandalorian Dreams =RK=. Part 7. Sundari Royal Palace. Sundari. Mandalore. Me becoming a Mandalore? That would be a disaster for various reasons, I sighed. By the Emperor's shriveled balls, how in the 9 Corellian hells did Bo think of this? Like what? The warrior woman gave me a sweet smile. While her voice was similar in tone and volume to that of a particularly pissed-off drill instructor. Hi, Bo-Katan. It's Vale, the Dark Lord of the Sith. How do you think that the Senate and the Jedi Council will react when they learn of this idea? They won't be thrilled. The saner until now Kryz's sister shrugged. Vale. Obi-Wan cleared his throat. Whatever they do if you become Mandalore, it would be worse if I was to get that title. Kenobi the Warlord, Obi-Wan the traitor. I can already hear them. The Jedi Master spoke in a dry voice. Let's not forget that you'll get blamed on corrupting me. So, it will be much, much worse. After all, that idea of yours would prove everything the more conservative council members say about you, corrupting Jedi, making them warlords, preparing to conquer the galaxy, then torture and kill everyone for fun. Seriously? I need a better PR department for when I take over the galaxy. Try co-oping Satines. Bo grumbled and got my attention. Her's that good? Hey. I'm right here. How do you think she remained in power for so long given her policies? This is Mandalore. Bo growled. I have to admit that our government has an excellent PR department. The Prime Minister added, even if he looked a bit embarrassed to admit it. Good to know. It's likely that I'll get kicked out of my position as general in the GAR. I tried again. Unlikely. If the rest of the officers have any brains, they would scream bloody murder. You're one of the few Republic generals who know what the criff they are doing. Bo didn't buy my next argument. Besides, if you're Mandalore, you'll have an army anyway. One arguably better, though we do lack a decent-sized fleet and some other equipment. Armek supported my companion. At least he was seeing which was the wind was blowing. Even if all that's true, I can't possibly help coordinate and plan a galaxy-wide war, command an army and be Mandalore at the same time. There will be a lot of warriors willing to help you. Bo beamed. Even a few competent administrators from my sister's government might prove useful. She glanced at the Prime Minister. Valentra will be thrilled at the reinforcements. I'll help take some of the load too. Obi-Wan added brightly, the bastard. I'm sure that Palian will help as well. I wasn't going to point out that accepting the position will leave me with no time for scheming to speak off. Which was a problem because I had a lot of schemes going on. Same for scrutiny. Even if the Mandalorians were going to like most of what I was up to, I couldn't allow my endgame plans to become a public knowledge. Not at this junction. Perhaps. The Senate and GAR High Command will put me under so much scrutiny that I won't be able to do my criffing job. I tried again. You're a Sith. You'll deal. Kenobi was positively unhelpful. Besides, you'll get personal guard as per tradition. They will be able to run interference when necessary. Bo-Katan beamed at me. She was liking this, the infernal woman. I was running out of arguments too. I couldn't say that I didn't want the job. Becoming Mandalore was a great honor, criff it all. declining it. Even the possibility of trying to be one would destroy me in the eyes of the Mandalorians, the present company included. Have you thought what would happen if I become Mandalore? The Sis will throw everything they have available against you. We may not be able to hold such an assault. Really? This is your argument? Bo rolled her eyes. You almost sound as you don't want the job, she said accusingly. If we ally with the Republic, with you, they will be coming against us with everything they have anyway. In that case you'll be gaining a Mandalorian army, so they will be doing their best to kill us all. After we've been weakened by an inevitable civil war, Bo sighed. While I hate to agree with my sister, Satine trailed off, that might be Mandalore's best chance. Criff it all. I didn't have the time for this. Yes, becoming Mandalore would be great boon, especially long term. However, it would prove a major distraction, I just knew it. Perhaps big enough to prove fatal. As things stood, I already had too many has to fill. On the other hand, I was in a criffed-up position. With the shenanigans coming from Coruscant, I would be blamed no matter the outcome. Yet, Plan A was on hold or destroyed. It would depend on Padme recovering and Anakin retaining something resembling a positive reputation after the trial. With Amidala out of the game, perhaps permanently, I lost her political contacts and thus allies. Griff. I needed a stable power base that couldn't be pulled from under my feet with unlawful order by the Chancellor. For the time being he simply couldn't remove me that way, not without committing a political suicide. However, when I inevitably criffed up, with or without Sidious's assistance, that would change. The truth was that I needed the power base that Mandalore represented almost as much as they needed my help. Let's talk terms. I have some conditions if I'm to do my damn best to become Mandalore. Bo beamed at me. The woman looked almost ready to hug and kiss the criff out of me. She felt like that in the Force too. Satine on the other hand was resigned, while Armek was hopeful. Kenobi on the other hand was relieved, the bastard. I smiled. I had plans for him too. He wasn't getting scratch-free from this fiasco either. Then had to suppress a frown. I could feel only vague buzzing from the aide. The man was trained to hide his thoughts and feelings from the Force, something he didn't bother use during our previous meeting. How curious, needless to say, that had my alarm bells ringing. That man wasn't going to blab about this meeting before we were ready to go public. I had to make sure of that. Terms? Bo frowned after a moment. Yep, she was going to resent the very idea that I wasn't jumping with joy at very mention of the idea she proposed. One of the reasons I wanted him as a possible candidate, I nodded at Obi-Wan, is that he would be great in facilitating the transition between the current government, a military one aiding Mandalore in ruling as well as in smoothing over things on the Republic side. In theory that's true. I'm a capable negotiator. Kenobi nodded. There was no trace of pride in his words, they were just a simple statement of facts. You're going to do that anyway. I smiled. The good news is you won't be quitting the Order. My smile turned mischievous. That concerns you too, Duchess. I can't have a government crisis on my hands at this time. Fat chance. Bo muttered. First, you two, I waved at Kenobi and Satine, get officially hooked up. I don't really care if you have a real relationship, sleep with each other, get married or whatever. I want at least a believable pretense anyway. What? Obi-Wan exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, Satine looked torn between indignation, anger and being quite pleased by the prospect. Kenobi didn't appear to be against the idea either. Obi-Wan, you're getting to be an advisor, ambassador and general, for Mandalore. By remaining a Jedi you can convince both the Order and the Senate that you're taking one for the team in order to monitor me and make sure that I won't go on the deep end. That's insane. Kenobi spluttered. Tough. You'll have to sell it anyway. Misery likes company and all that. Besides, would you trust me with the Mandalorian army at my back if the Jedi overreact again and you aren't here to keep my response sane-ish? I smiled. That's blackmail. Obi-Wan snapped back. Whatever works. You all want to make me a damn politician besides everything else I have on my plate. You're all helping. I turned my attention to Satine. I have no words for how much you criffed up. The Duchess glared pure murder at me. All points I bought myself by trying to hook her and Kenobi up just evaporated. I couldn't care any less. You are getting in touch with your PR people. The task is to convince Mandalore and the Republic that when you took power, It was a response to the death and destruction caused by the civil war. That's true. Satine looked confused. Then, I pointedly ignored her. You are to convince them that all you really wanted was to rebuild Mandalorian space and give it time for your people to recover before the next war, so they could once again be the warriors you know them to be. For that to happen, you needed to rebuild both the civilian and military infrastructure first. Unfortunately, thanks to the Sis, your plan was only partially successful. Now all Mandalorians have to do their best to protect their homes and prove to everyone that they are the honorable warriors everyone believed them to be. If presented right, that should appease both the average Mando as well as your supporters. I don't need them sabotaging the war effort. Well, that's a great idea. Bo smirked. Sister, if you do this right, only the Death Watch will be trying to kill instead of what we have today, most self-respecting warriors wanting your head on a pike. Satine groaned and Kenobi winced at that statement. The most interesting were the reactions of Satine's people. They were unfazed by that declaration. Totally unsurprised. So they knew the score too, though the Duchess was either blind or didn't care. Since she appeared to be an idealist, it was probably the latter. That should be doable. With a bit of luck. Ahmet nodded. He was very pleased at my latest idea, though I wasn't sure if it was because it was likely to keep Satine alive or him in a position of power. Is that all? The Duchess asked in a frosty tone. Of course not. I glared at her. The woman was in a sore need of a reality check. That would be one of Kenobi's tasks. I thought that he'll be eager to do it. The man was apparently smitten with Satine and would like to keep the impossible woman alive. Profit, she was as bad as Padme. If this insanity is going to work, I'll need ASAP meetings with the most powerful and influential clan heads, briefings on them too. I'll see to it, the Prime Minister stated. I was starting to think that Ahmet was running the government with Satine being a little better than a figurehead, though she was probably going to disagree with that assessment. Now the space slug in the room, the Death Watch. We need them neutralized yesterday. I won't have a major civil war on my hand, though purging the diehards is going to be inevitable. That's true. My former comrades have a core of followers who are fanatically devoted to Vizsla. Then there are outright criminals. They will oppose a purge, especially the Slavers. Your thought on that had reached their ears and they will fight. Bo nodded at me. Good. Those bastards need to die. I won't condone slavery in any place under my authority, I hissed aloud, letting them all hear the steel in my voice. How do we deal with the Death Watch? Obi-Wan asked. Propaganda. The warriors who joined because they saw no other alternative, I need them. We are going to persuade them that a Mandalore, me, is what they have been searching for. I'll be offering them honor, glory and most importantly, victory. That might work. Ahmet must. Second, expose the Death Watch. Bo-Katan has some information on their shady activities. We strike at any illegal operation they have in this system, do our best to take prisoners and break them, thus finding out more. The assassins we have in custody will be a good starting point. In fact, I'll be interrogating them before we act on Bo's information. I didn't add that a lot of her knowledge was going to be obsolete. The assassination attempt proved that. Anything else? I have proof that the Death Watch betrayed the last of the true Mandalorians and led a Jedi strike team to their location. I smiled. That's a two-edged sword. Obi-Wan sighed. You'll hardly have to prove yourself anymore in light of that information. You're already a Jedi Master and as far as I know you had nothing to do with the debacle. No. I was here, protecting Satine at that time. Kenobi shook his head. So you two have been lovebirds for that long and yet there are no marriage or kids. Do you really know what to do in bed with each other? Next to me, Bo-Katan didn't even try stopping her laughter. The rest looked either stricken by my words or embarrassed. Ah yeah. Diplomats weren't supposed to act like me. Hey. It wasn't like being all polite and gentle would have helped me in this mess. I was a bastard of a Sith Lord and had a reputation to keep. Next, armed forces. I have contacts who will be able to provide some quantity of weapons and armor as well as purchase more. That will help. I need to know how's the Mandalorian military-industrial complex nowadays. We'll need small arms, armors, combat vehicles and most importantly ships, and a lot of them. I recommend you speak first with Horus Yogamet, the chairman and of Mandal Motors. He's also one of the most influential clan leaders, Ahmet said. Good. I'll need a briefing on him and a meeting first thing tomorrow. I'll arrange it. The Prime Minister nodded. How can you provide weapons? One of the special operations groups under my command is currently posing as a PMC. They will help. I didn't add that they were likely to back me even if I went against the Republic. That's useful and probably outside of your authority. Republic intelligence knows and actually helps. Valentra too. I smiled. I had my bases covered. It was pure accident that after the attacks on Coruscant and Windu stunned, none of the above really trusted the Jedi or the Senate. Our sparring match. Bo smiled wickedly at me. We should make it public so people could see you fight in person. I stared at her and slowly nodded. Only an idiot would have thought that she didn't have ulterior motives for that suggestion. By the Force, why did she have to be a gorgeous redhead besides everything else? This was another complication I didn't need, though I had the sneaking suspicion that it was one that I might enjoy very much. This is a good starting point, Obi-Wan declared. Indeed. We have an interrogation to run. I nodded at Bo, who looked eager. From what I felt coming from her, she was one to keep a grudge. Good to know. We should have a liaison with your people. I waved at Satine. Your advisor will do. He's coming with us so he can relay to you anything else I can think of tonight. My voice broke no argument. Interludes, Mad Science. =RK equals. Interlude, Rebirth I. Republic R&D Center. Location classified. Coruscant. Dr. Solemn, it's almost done. The single blood and flesh surgeon in the room in front of the director spoke aloud. The human medic was busy overseeing 6 spherical medical droids which were working on a clone trooper who had been grievously wounded a few months ago. Is it going to work? Solemn asked. It's too early to say, sir, though the initial tests we're running are positive. The subject will live this time, that much I can promise. We need much more than simple survival or even partial recovery. The director must. Besides, the latter can be achieved with commercially available meditech. I'm no, sir. However, adding so much tech into a body, especially one as wounded as Arkia was. The human shrugged. We both know that it's not impossible. There are more than a handful cyborgs more enhanced than our prototype here. Solemn looked unimpressed. True, sir. However, there's one huge difference. They're practically a work of art, not something that can really be mass-produced. Further, we don't have access to the research of the people who did those enhancements. Most are beyond Republic space and those here are very well hidden. The surgeon grumbled. What are the prospects for Ark? Solemn sighed. Quite good actually. His missed limbs were replaced with state-of-the-art combat prosthetic. We built them from lightweight armor alloy for increased durability. They will make him about 4 times stronger. The surgeon sounded proud of himself. We were expecting 10-fold strength increase. The director wasn't impressed. I know. There's a problem with the connections to the blood and flesh body. Those joints simply aren't durable enough. In latter models which are more enhanced than Ark here, that problem will be solved. Speaking about durability, we've coated his bones with bio-neutral ceramic alloy which makes them very hard to break. Further, his spine is reinforced by cybernetic implants and so is his skull. That's good to know. Side effects? We had to implant him with a couple of devices that help his bone marrow generate the proper amount of blood cells. We even went a step further and poached a few things from Project Ascension. His blood is not more efficient, coagulates much faster, and as a beneficial side effect, Ark will be highly resistant to a lot of poisons and toxins. Well, that's good at least. Still, we'll need much more than this. We know, Director. Ark here's just our first prototype. We're just finishing installing his back-to injectors and will start on the subdermal armor grafts soon. That will give him unprecedented survivability in combat, though nothing like what we're planning. Unfortunately, a lot of the tech we'll need for Stage 2 is still theoretical or in the early stages of development. The good news is if Arki here is successful, we'll be able to return tens of thousands of soldiers back to the field within 4 months. What we learn from Stage I will be invaluable for the next part of this project. This is better than I feared, though not as good as I hoped. We'll get the job done as soon as possible, Director. =RK Ascension I. Republic R&D Center. Location classified. Coruscant. Director. Dr. Skrin, a Kaminoan mercenary, who was the leader of Project Ascension, exclaimed when she saw the Duros enter her domain. "You're just in time." She waved a long, thin arm at him and smiled. "The first batch of volunteers will be decanned shortly. From your reports I understand that Stage I has been an unmitigated success," Solemn stated after he nodded a greeting. "Indeed." Skrin's head bobbed over her long neck and she beamed. "Here we aren't constrained by what peak species performance is supposed to be." The scientist scoffed at the mere idea that her work should stop at what evolution had achieved. "That was never the idea. We need something more." The director nodded in agreement. Thanks to this war, they were not only allowed but expected to push the boundaries of science beyond what anyone had dreamed in ages. It truly was a great time to be a scientist. "We have reasonable safe gene therapy that can bring people to their species peak performance within 3 months. Once that has been tested," Skrin grinned, "we'll be ready to push further into the next level." "Good. Walk me through what you've achieved," the director ordered as they walked further into the facility. First were the easy things: stimulating muscle growth, increasing bone density without compromising the skeleton, making the blood more efficient. Skrin waved a hand. "We got that done by combining already existing research and therapies, then improving upon them. It took a couple of months, but it was quite simple." The woman spoke dismissively. "You did much more than that," Solemn stated as they reached a sealed door. "Of course." Skrin scoffed and went to the scanner on the left side of the door. "We improved reflexes and reaction times by tweaking neurotransmitters and upgrading the nervous system. As a side effect, our test subjects have increased pain thresholds, but their appendages are a bit numb." The doctor shrugged as if it wasn't a problem. The door slid open and revealed a large chamber filled with hundreds of Bacta tanks. Almost all of them were full with beings of various species. "We also tweaked various organs to make them more efficient, especially when processing various toxins and poisons are concerned. Thanks to the changes, Stage I subjects are expected to have a minimal resistance to nerve agents, though they will be by no means immune to them." "Useful. How do they compare to the clones?" "At least as strong. Some will have better reflexes and they will be healing faster. The main issue was tweaking the gene therapy to work on many species. If we were going to improve just humans, Stage I would have been complete 2 months ago." "I see. Good work. What have you cooking up for the next stage?" Solemn sounded quite satisfied with what was done. "This will be the fun part, even more efficient organs as well as adding redundancies for anything vital. We already have 30% success rate in adding a secondary hearts in humans." Skrin beamed. "Benefits?" "Harder to kill subjects. With the improved blood we're developing, they will heal 3 to 4 times faster. The downside, as with most of our enhancements, will be increased calorie consumptions to fuel them." That was a given. Solemn nodded. There always were trade-offs. Skrin's job was to make the benefits worth it. "We're looking into further strength and speed increase, about 4 to 5 times the norm. That would allow soldiers to carry heavy armor and weapons and will make outfitting the troops cheaper. I understand that the power armor we're developing will be very expensive and not practical to outfit everyone with." "That's true. It's also one of the main reasons we're putting as much resources in this project." Solemn nodded. "We won't disappoint," the Kaminoan declared solemnly. "We're working on upgrading the nervous system as much as we can. We hope for 2 or 3-fold increase in reflexes and reaction speeds. However, there's a hard cap we'll be reaching with neurotransmitters. We won't get as good reaction as the rebirth units that would replace or enhance the nervous system with fiber optics. That won't be a long-term project. We'll be combining the later stages of these 2 projects anyway." The director waved a hand in dismissal. "That would be interesting to see." Skrin nodded. "Next, we're looking at increased endurance, which will take some tweaking in most subjects' systems. However, that won't be available before Stage 2 is well underway. We still have some problem to solve." The director shrugged. He had seen the failures. It was ugly and regrettable, but they learned from those accidents. "We've also improved the vision of the subjects, added increased night vision and are working on adaptive lenses for the eyes, that should increase accuracy." "That's splendid." "We're also looking in biological subdermal armor and ways to increase the toughness of the skin without crippling side effects. Those 2 will be reserved for Stage 2 or 3. Skrin must. You can always use the subdermal armor from Rebirth," the director proposed. That's something we're looking in, along with a synthetic alloy that should act as a replacement skin they are looking into. Unfortunately, the latter's in the theoretical stages for the time being. Time frame for stage 2? At least a month before we can start fully enhancing a test subject to that standard. I see. It's better than projected. I want stage I's testing done ASAP and ready for distribution in the army before the new volunteer units finish training. HICOM wants them enhanced before they're deployed. Within 3 months, right? That's when the first new non-clone divisions will be ready for deployment. We'll be ready to implement mass enhancements in 3 months plus minus a few weeks, but we'll need increased funding and resources to create the necessary infrastructure. Skrin spoke after thinking for a few minutes. Consider it done. The director nodded. =RK=. Interlude, the SIS and their toys. Techno-Union R&D Center Trinity. Location classified. Outer Rim. Count Dooku sat at the head of a long table made of black metal that was polished so much that it resembled a mirror. His current apprentice and one of her henchmen took seats to his right, and a pair of heavily augmented humanoids did so on the other side of the table. Foreman Cleo, the Sith Lord, nodded politely. Congratulations are in order. The Union leaders simply did what was logical. Cleo's modulated voice showed no inflection. You aren't here for small talk. The cyborg stated. No. Our time is precious and the war still rages. That leaves little spare time for the more refined things in life. The Sith shrugged. In the last few months, the Republic has unveiled a number of advanced technologies and weapon designs that played a key role in halting our advance. We can no longer consider this war winnable in a short order. This poses certain problems. Isn't that the understatement of the century? Dooku thought. We're well aware. There was just a hint of annoyance in the foreman's artificial voice. Our R&D departments had worked hard to ensure our superiority. We have a number of technologies either ready for deployment or near completion. The cyborg paused. However, they won't come cheap. Producing them takes more time and resources than our current armies. Most of the B-series of droids are practically useless in the field. The new shielded armor the Republic deployed on Geonosis made the B-1 and 2s totally obsolete. Even the SB subtype are heavily outclassed. Severance spoke for the first time. Her voice was flat and annoyed. We know. Analysis shows that continued production of B-series for anything but naval crew and maintenance units will be strategic mistake. The second, so far unnamed cyborg stated. This is Ilrith, one of the Union's primary strategic planners. The foreman introduced his companion. Dooku gave the second cyborg a nod and waved him to continue. We've already ceased B1 and 2 type production and are shifting those lines into either SB subtype or BX Commando series. We're introducing gradual upgrades in armor and firepower to our SB droids, though outfitting them with shields will be difficult in the short term. There are some design issues with using the components of our destroy lines, and we don't currently produce another shield and power plant small enough to fit in their chassis, Ilrith stated. I trust you're solving that issue? Dooku was less than pleased by that information. We have multiple teams working on the problem. Cleo interjected. Analysis on the data brought by Agent Dan and her unit shows that our most effective counter in the short time will be to shift our ground forces composition into SB and Commando Heavy 1. Ilrith continued as if he wasn't interrupted. However, our projections show that if we are to win, the Confederation will need new and more powerful types of droids. It's true. All but the commandos were almost useless. Once the Republic outfit a significant number of units with their new gear, most of our fronts will collapse. Dan added. We all know the problems on the ground. Solutions? Dooku frowned. We have plans for certain prototypes, though they were deemed too expensive and unnecessary by the Council. The foreman sounded smug. Enlighten us. Cleo tapped a button on his right arm and a holographic image came to life above the table. A streamlined humanoid droid was standing at attention. Its armor was all made of sharp angles and obviously made to resist blasters and slugs. While it had a superficial resemblance to the Commando droids, it had more in common with Grievous Magna Guards and the SB series. This is the SBX-1 concept. Ilrith spoke in his bland emotionless voice. It combines the best series of our current combat models with increases durability, agility, and it's smarter than the Commandos. Its programming includes improved tactical analyst algorithms, strategic modeling as well as self-updating system allowing them to actually learn, not simply extrapolate from previous data as our current BX units. In fact, programming-wise, the SBX type are close to our tactical command droids though not as smart. That's simply not required. That might be useful, Severance muttered. Why aren't we already deploying them? We only built a single prototype. It was deemed too expensive and too good for the role it was supposed to fill. According to everyone, the BX series were more than good enough and the SBX were simply a waste of resources, Ilrath reported. We'll need them to replace the commander droids in their roles across the board as well as a power multiplier attached to our more regular forces, Dooku said. I want production to start ASAP. I'll see to it, my lord, Cleo stated. Next. The SBX image was replaced by a 2.5 meters tall behemoth. This machine appeared to be hunched forward. It stood on two curiously shaped legs, which had a metal shield protecting the front side of their vulnerable joints. The arms were surrounded by built-in weapons, a flamethrower, a heavy repeater on the left and a laser cannon above the right. There was a missile pod above the left shoulder and a large cannon sticking above the right. This is the Titan concept. Ilrath started speaking. It's protected by a prototype tank-grade armor, 3 shield generators and built-in laser AMS. The cyborgs sounded almost giddy. This design is a direct answer to the New Republic gear. Most of its internal components are off the shelf and we're already producing its weapons in one form or another. Its role will be twofold. First, assault, directly engaging enemy-hardened positions and large groups of infantry. Second role is battlefield coordination and command. The Titan will have a modified tactical command droid programming allowing more efficient use of our forces in its area. We're already building a prototype. Once any major flaws are removed we can field test it. We'll move into mass production if the Titan proves to be a practical design. That's it? Severance looked less than pleased. The rest is incremental upgrades of our current units, more powerful weapons for the SB series and improved small arms for the rest of our droids and biological units. The foreman answered. Analysis proved that we have an advantage in indirect fire artillery. The lack of sufficient such units on Geonosis is one of the main reasons the enemy suffered minimal casualties in comparison to our own. We recommend increase in production as well as focusing research on improving this type of technology. Ilrath added. Do so. Dooku nodded after a moment. Space. He stared grimly at the cyborgs. The unexpected effectiveness of the Guardian system and its mass deployment rendered our current doctrine obsolete. Cleo actually grumbled. As you know, we relied on mass droid fighter swarms as a major power multiplier. That strategy is now rendered obsolete. Further analysis concludes that all existing small craft, from fighters and bombers to heavily protected assault shuttles, are unsurvivable in Guardian-dominated environment. Further, long and medium-range missile and torpedo strikes will be heavily degraded or neutralized before hitting a target. I'm aware of the implications. I need solutions. Dooku glared at his cyborgs. A possible tactic is one demonstrated by the Republic above Ryloth and Geonosis. Pinpoint hyperjumps into point-blank range followed by mass torpedo strikes. Unless a hyperspace exit is calculated perfectly, the Guardian systems of a fleet will be able to significantly degrade such attacks. Other counter include a deployment of gravity well generators to ensure that any such strike is dragged into real space at a safe distance. The Republic isn't ready to deploy interdictors at this time. I want small craft outfitted for such strikes in the immediate future before the enemy can adapt. Dooku ordered. Still, that's a very short-term solution. We're aware of that. Ilrath. Cleo let a note of amusement into his voice. While we'll continue production of Munificent-class ships, we won't be expanding it. With our fighter contingent neutralized, a trade of multiple Munificents for Republic cruiser will no longer be to our strategic advantage. We propose to shift the frigates' role back to their intended one, raiders and escorts. We propose increased production of our latest class command ships, the Providence-class dreadnoughts, as the main combat unit of our Navy. We'll be modifying most of them to reduce or remove the carrier role and use that space for more weapons and armor. That's an idea I like. Dooku nodded. What about small craft? We're playing with various designs and upgrades that may make them of a limited use against Guardian-equipped targets, but even prototypes are some time off. The good news is that we just finished testing our own version of that system, the Umbrella. Its production lines will be ready within the week, and we estimate that in 2 months all our capital ships will be outfitted with it. Any new or still unfinished ship will be receiving it. That's the kind of news I want to hear. Dooku smiled for the first time since the meeting began. What other plans to enhance the effectiveness of our navy do you have? Multiple, including 2 rather controversial strategies, Ilrath stated. I'm listening. Dooku leaned forward. He felt that he'll like what he was going to hear. First, our most powerful ships, the Subjugator class. We'll need more of them, especially after the Corellians entered the war. We're proposing some modifications so they can fit different combat roles. Second, we want to expand the production of Lucrehue type. Above Geonosis they did best, though the lack of Umbrella made them very vulnerable to small craft strikes. Once our vultures were torn apart by the Guardians and enemy fighters, our battleships were simply overwhelmed. We want to introduce a few distinct variants of the typical Lucrehue for either system defense or assault of heavily protected systems. I'll want more information later. What else? Dooku asked. There's a certain project that's in the prototyping stages right now. Ilrath started. It's about a new type of battle cruiser which, while quite expensive and relatively slow to build, may prove a game changer, especially in view of the Republic Star Destroyer program. Speak. Dooku ordered. I'm talking about the Bulwark program and the Bulwark Macquarie battle cruisers, which it has produced. Ilrath pressed a few buttons built in his arm, and the image of the Titan was replaced by a ship that was a cross between a flying brick which had its edges rounded into sloped armor, giving it an ellipsoid look. There were 2 stubby drive sections attached near the back of the hull, though they were dwarfed by the main engines of the behemoth. There were a lot of turbo laser and ion cannon emplacements visible, and those were just the main guns. There were scores of smaller weapons, presumably for the Bulwark's Umbrella. The Bulwark Mark I is projected to be the most powerful ton-for-ton warship in known space. Most well protected too, it has enough armor to ram through smaller ships without shields and emerge with minimal damage. Ilrath actually sounded excited. The first prototype will be ready within the month. I'm requesting authorization for mass production once all major problems are fixed. Once the prototype is ready, I want a comprehensive report on its performance, problems, how many of those ships can we build in a reasonable amount of time, and how it will affect the production levels of our remaining space forces. Dooku ordered. You said something about controversial tactics. I'll see it done, my lord. Ilrath nodded. About the tactics we're proposing,